All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Generations Legacy United Deluxe Class Infernac Universe Magneous. Yeah, this is the new sort of like weaponizer modulator gimmick for Legacy United. These sort of rock-themed guys, not quite rock lords, but kind of in that same ballpark. The Infernac universe is actually referencing a different Hasbro brand, the Inhumanoids, which, you know, the Infernac, I think was a planet. I don't know if Infernacs were the species or the planet. I'm not super familiar with Inhumanoids, but there was a species of rock creatures basically that came from the Infernac whatever, right? So that's where that word comes from, which is kind of interesting. I don't believe these guys have a different name, like, you know, modulators, weaponizers, fossilizers. They're like rock erisers or something. I don't think that they have a name. They're just being labeled as being from the Infernac universe. So I don't know how we're going to be referring to them generally, just the rock guys, the not rock lords. But yeah, no, this is a pretty cool figure. As you can see, he doesn't quite turn into a rock. He turns into a kind of like rocky truck, which is a really neat alternate mode. Like, I really do like it. It rolls really nicely. It's got some really nice sculpted and painted detail for like all the like rock texture. I am sort of question how this guy fits into like the fiction, right? Because it's like, okay, yeah, sure, these guys are not, you know, Cybertronians, or maybe they're from some long lost colony of Cybertron or something like that. But like, how does he have a vehicle mode that's mostly an Earth car covered in rocks? Did he scan that and then just turn into a vehicle that is still covered in rocks? What's the story there? Because like with the other one that we've got, Boulder Crash, the little one, he kind of just turns into like a, you know, nondescript rock type thing with wheels, right? Whereas this guy, it's a truck, right? Like, it's clearly a truck, like a truck from the planet Earth covered in rocks. So that's kind of strange. But regardless of how it fits into the fiction, I like it. I think it's a really nice alternate mode. Probably would have preferred if the theme they went with these guys were just like straight up rock formers, because, you know, I love rock lords and it would have been cool to see, you know, more figures of that sort of brand. But for what we've got, I think it is a cool alternate mode. He does come with this like axe weapon here, which if you want to store it, can just tab onto these two little tabs on the back there and just store like that. You know, normally I don't like weapons on top of vehicle modes, but I feel like this is a nondescript rocky blob enough anyway that doesn't really change the look all that much. They also do show off, because this guy does do the modulator gimmick, right, where you can take some parts off of him. So if you take these sections off, these sections that are like part of the legs, and split them, you can actually plug them into the axe. There's just a little tab there, so you can kind of plug each side in like this to make this kind of like big hammer weapon, and then you can plug that into the front for some sort of like battering ram alternate mode, which is kind of interesting. I have some sort of issues with how this, you know, operates in robot mode, so I don't usually do that, but, you know, it's an option. I'm not really sure. I feel like this is one of the weaker, at least so far, gimmicks in terms of the modulators, in terms of like actually knowing what you're supposed to do with these guys, because it's like, okay, sure, the weaponizers turn into weapons, right? The you know, the base guys, the armorizers or modulators or whatever they're called, they kind of turned into armor, right? The fossilizers also turn into weapons, and they've got the bone theme. The Junkions are meant to combine in their vehicle modes, and I'm not really sure what these guys are supposed to do. They give some like rocky armor bits, I guess, in robot mode, but it's not quite as clear as some of the previous ones, and they feel a little bit less versatile. But just like the Junkions, they can transform without doing any parts forming. So even if you just wanted as a standalone figure without doing the gimmick, it's still neat. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, just for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see, you know, pretty average size deluxe car there. And then the fun comparison, here he is with the Rock Lord Granite, who I feel like he looks the most like in terms of a color scheme there. He sounds Magneous, kind of sounds like a bit more like Magmar, but he doesn't really look anything like Rock Lord's Magmar. So that's what they look like together. And then, yeah, to get into transformation, obviously we'll just take the weapon off for now. First thing you want to do is take this back section here and kind of just untab it. It tabs into these bits, which will be the arms here, so that you can kind of loosen up this whole section and then flip it around like that. Split these sections, which are going to be the legs, and then take these panels here, and they'll actually fold down like that to become the feet. And then we can take these sections, these are going to be the arms, and just rotate them out like that, and then take the hands, rotate them down, and then rotate them forward. I like that the back side of the panels of the hands actually do become part of the outside of the vehicle mode. It's neat that that actually is visible, because usually the hands are just hidden away somewhere. And then you take this little bumper section and flip it up like that. That has his head. And then you take these sections and just fold them in like this. These can be kind of scary, these joints, especially going back into vehicle mode. You really have to get a good amount of pressure to get them over these tabs. Like sometimes it's okay, but sometimes it just feels like a bit much. And then basically you take this whole section and it'll kind of double hinge down, and then the arm panels plug onto either side of it. And then the whole thing kind of crunches down like this and locks into place. And there we have Magneous in his robot mode. And yeah, I think he looks really cool. I really like the way this guy turned out. He's got a great head sculpt there, some nice asymmetry, really nice painted detail. What's kind of funny is he does have this kind of like hollow section in the chest here, which like during the live stream that they revealed this guy, they presented that as like, oh, being a feature, like part of the lore, because they're not Cybertronians, they don't have sparks. It's like, okay, guys, you had a gap you didn't, figure out how to fill. That's okay. It doesn't have to be like, this is a feature, the fact that he's got an empty chest cavity, even though there's no like real sculpting in there or anything, and it's a little bit awkward. I wish it were filled up, but it's not the end of the world. I just thought that was kind of funny there. In terms of articulation, the head is on a swivel. It's a pretty tight swivel, and then the panel that it's on can get like a little bit of up and down rotation, which can be kind of helpful. Shoulders are just, this is part of the part that's just pegged in, so it just swivels around like that and then can fold out to the side. It's got a bicep swivel, about 90 degrees of bend at the elbow. The wrists are on ball joints, so they can rotate around and kind of bend in like that. It's got a waist cut. Hips can go forward and back and out to the side. Thigh swivel, pretty deep knee bend for transformation. And then the feet here, because of the way they transform, they have a little bit of backwards tilt on that joint, and then forwards tilt on the upper joint, and then also ankle tilt. So pretty good foot articulation there. He can obviously hold his weapon, which I think looks pretty good. And then the big unfortunate thing about this weapon is it just has straight up no place to store in robot mode, which is rough when it's like, his whole gimmick is like being a modulator, right? And having like pegs and ports everywhere. But like, unlike all the other Legacy figures, he doesn't have like ports on his arms, ports on his shoulders. I mean, he's got these pegs on his shoulders, but there's no port on the weapon itself. Doesn't have ports on the bottom of his legs. Doesn't have a port on his back. I mean, he does have all those things, but they're already filled up by other, like the weapony bits, so it's like you don't have anywhere to put the weapon when he's not holding it, which I feel like is a huge bummer. And especially just in terms of the versatility of this guy, like as a modulator, I feel like you should have more pegs and ports on him, at least ports, right? So you can actually like combine these guys a bit more, because though he's the only one we've got so far that actually does this gimmick, he feels like he'll be a little bit limited when you try to combine him with the other ones, unfortunately. But yeah, that's a real big bummer to me that the weapon just straight up has no place to store in robot mode. I thought at first maybe this little carve out was like shallow, but it, could actually serve as like a 5mm port, but no, not really. I'm sort of surprised to find out that you can, because I saw they take this off, right, and they showed it off that he can like hold this as like a shield piece, but I was expecting it to be able to like peg onto his arm, right, because that's usually what they do with these. Also a little surprised to find that there's just like no sculpted detail on the inside, which is not a problem. I just, usually they do cover all the surfaces and little details like that, but maybe because they had so much going on the outside, they didn't bother. But as a piece that's meant to come off, I found that a little bit strange. So yeah, it's a real big bummer to me that the weapon can't store, and who knows how well this guy will function with the other guys, because the parts that do come off of him are obviously this part, the weapon, obviously these little panels on the arms can come off. Let's see, the arms themselves can come off. These panels on the side of the legs with the wheels on them can come off, and then the shins that also have the feet can come off. And there's not really like much you can do with a lot of these parts. Like you can bring on a figure like Chase here, who also is in the same wave as him, and you could do things like, oh, plug these panels onto his arms to give him kind of like Rocky armor detail or whatever. but I don't know. It just feels a little bit half-baked compared to like some of the previous modulator gimmick guys. So I don't know. I mean, obviously we could give him a big, the big hammer mode with the leg pieces, but like there's not really a whole lot you can do with the majority of the figure. Like I don't know what you're supposed to do with like the bulk of the body here, so it's like I don't know, it just feels a little bit less versatile, which is honestly fine. Like I'm fine with these guys being just kind of like standalone figures that don't have the the modulator gimmick as functional as some of the other guys. But it is kind of a bummer because that is a fun play pattern. But at the end of the day, if it just ends up being a nice standalone figure, like that's okay. I can never remember what side these go on. I think it has to be like that, right? Maybe the other way. Who's to say? So they do tab in. Yeah, it's like that. Okay. But yeah, so it could be a little bit more, I think, playable in terms of the actual modulator gimmick. But even with what's here, he is a really nice figure. He's got nice articulation. All the sculpting on the outside of the vehicle mode and the robot mode look really nice. He's got some nice paint work with like the overspray here with like the rocky bits. So he's still a lot of fun, even if I don't really like how he functions sort of as a modulator. But yeah, to get onto the comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see pretty average size Deluxe here. And here he is again with Rock Lord's Granite. The Rock Lord, I feel like he is the most alike. It'd be cool to maybe see like a repaint of this guy where he's got like some, like blue thighs and a blue face to like really drive that home a bit more. But either way, it's just cool to be getting new kind of like Rocky type characters because the Rock Lords are a really fun toy line. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to Magneous. He's a fun figure, but not without issue. I think the biggest bummer to me is the fact that the weapon just has nowhere to go in robot mode if he's not holding it. That's always something that drives me nuts in terms of weapon storage. But like usually it's like, okay, I kind of get why they don't have them, have a place to go in the vehicle mode, even though I feel like that should be a design priority. But I kind of understand the reasoning there, because if you're having it be more compact, it's not always easy to get a big ridiculous weapon folded up somewhere. But he's got vehicle mode storage. It's the robot mode he doesn't have storage for, and that's real easy. That's just like put a hole somewhere, like on the arm, on the back of this thing, even just put 2 little tabs for these things on there. I don't know. It just feels like that's a huge oversight. But, even at the end of the day, even if I just put the weapon off to the side and just keep the figure, in and of himself without a weapon, he's still a lot of fun. Just not quite as elaborate with the modulator gimmick as some of the previous versions. But we'll have to see how that carries on for the future ones. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to them. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Legacy United Infernac Universe Magneous.